What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here with another video for you guys. And Spurs play Man United at Old Trafford on Sunday, 4:30 p.m. in what is a very big game, a pivotal game in our Premier League season. To preview the game with us, we've got Jay from the Stretford Paddock with us today to preview the game. How are you doing, Jay? Thanks for joining us.
Always a pleasure. Yeah, it's a big game, this one. So, we were just chatting on off camera about this time last season, or I chatted to you guys last season, and you were a bit more sort of down on your luck, a bit more negative, and we were doing like a combined 11, and at the time it felt like there was loads of United players in that combined 11, and now not so many.
Yeah, I read the most strangest, I don't know if that's an English word, the strangest stat I've probably ever read about the Man United game coming into this game. If Ten Hag wins, then Man United he will have the best win percentage of every Man United manager in the Premier League. But if he loses, he'll have the worst loss percentage of any Man United manager in the Premier League. So does that not go to prove the Jekyll and Hyde nature of this Man United side?
100%, yeah. I mean, people obviously, people go, "What? Surely not." Sir Alex Ferguson managed a lot more games than Eric Ten Hag has, but his win rate is very high because we don't draw games. We either win or we lose, and we win more games than we lose. Obviously, even when we're not doing well, we still win a lot more. And also, his first season was very good, especially at home. We won, I think, nearly after the first game where we lost to Brighton. I think we won all bar about 2 games after that. So he does have a good record to a degree. But like you say, if we lose, his record will be worse than David Moyes, which says it all, really.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. And before we get into, obviously, the specifics about Man United, what is going on at the moment? If you can tell our viewers what is going on with the takeover process. Obviously, we know Ineos is taking over a minority stake and they're going to have control of the footballing side. Where is that process coming along? And do you reckon that will have enough impact in time to make a difference in January?
Well, where we're up to now is we're waiting for it to be ratified, I believe. So it's going to take about 2 months for the Premier League to ratify it and go, okay, green light. Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos now officially own 25% of Manchester United. They've already been at Carrington. Dave Brailsford's been there, who's like going to come in and oversee the football side of things, as far as I know. Sir Jim Ratcliffe's been there, met Eric Ten Hag, met the players. So it's just a bit of a waiting game now, which is quite frustrating as United fans because we've been waiting for, the Glazers made this announcement about strategic alternatives November 2022. So we've been waiting since then. Obviously now he's come in, it's not a full takeover, it's 25%, but there should be, some influence on the footballing side. I think he's going to take over that and some investment, but it won't have any effect, I don't think anyway, on the January transfer window. We're going to have to wait. He's not going to be ratified before the window shuts. So it's going to be difficult for him to have too much influence. Plus, I think from what noises we're hearing, a big part of what is going on under Sir Jim Ratcliffe is actually looking at the club, looking at what needs fixing, and almost doing this audit of like, okay, from top to bottom, we need to fix this club. This needs to change. We need to do that. Not just simply coming in and going, right, here's a load of dough, let's buy a load of players. Because we've also got as well, in terms of transfers, the FFP issue to consider because we've got this massive wage bill. We've got players that are barely playing for Manchester United and are earning loads of money. We've just got one of them off the books for a certain amount of time, and Jadon Sancho's obviously gone back to Dortmund. But you look at the top earners in the Premier League, and a lot of them are from Manchester United, and it sort of shows where we're up to. So I think Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos are just going to have to get the sort of the house in order, or United's house in order, for a little while before we see any impact on the playing side of things.
Yeah, before,
no, I think it's just a waiting game.
Yeah, 100%. Before I joined the call, I was actually watching a snippet of a Jesse March podcast with Simon Jordan. He was talking about Ralph Rangnick's time at Man United a bit, and the big issues he was talking about were the culture around the club, not necessarily the players. The culture around the players was bad, but he said there's no cohesion between the scouting department, sporting director, and the management. There was no full process going, everyone on the same page in terms of moving forward in a certain direction. I think that's exactly what problem Spurs have had in recent times on that front, and something we've been very critical of the board for. But that has definitely changed, and we've made steps in the right direction, bringing the sporting director of recent times, a manager playing the football that we want to see, and the recruitment being kind of geared towards that. So is that what the promise has been from Ineos, that these things will be changing?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a big promise that they've made, and one of the main things is to sort of get that cohesion, get that communication strategy and structure in place that you need at a top football club. There was an interesting article in the Athletic a few weeks ago. Ladinoka Laurie Whitwell wrote an article about the fact that you have all these sort of people at the club almost just looking after themselves, not working together. No one's really willing to make a decision. There's no cohesion. There's no communication, and you've had a situation where you've had manager coming in after manager coming in, making the signings they want up, certain players being brought in for that manager, no long-term thinking. When that manager goes, he's left with the players he doesn't want. A new manager comes in, gets certain signings, some signings he might not even want. It's just a bit of a shambles. And I think a big part of what Ineos have got to do is sort of, reorganise the club, get it into a sort of a footing where we are, and it pains me to say this, a bit more organised like a Manchester City or even a Liverpool, who seems to have a very good structure in place where the manager, the director of football, the sporting director, the scouting department, the chief exec, they all work in tandem together, getting the right signings in, getting the right scouting in, getting the right structure in place for a successful team. Because ultimately, as a football fan, I don't concern myself with what goes on behind the scenes as much if you've seen it on the pitch, you've seen your team playing well. But we haven't really seen that consistently from Manchester United for over 10 years. So you have to look at that. What is the reason why? Is Louis van Gaal, is Jose Mourinho, is Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, are all these managers, Ralph Rangnick, are they all terrible? Are they all really bad managers? No, they're not. Some of them might not have been what we needed, but they're not bad managers. The reason they failed, they've ultimately all failed, is because the structure at Manchester United is terrible, and that's what you can expect from the Glazers, who've just been poor owners.
Yeah, I have to say, as a Spurs fan, we've definitely been having similar conversations amongst ourselves about that. Had all these managers come in and fail and not achieve what we hoped. And, it does, we had Mourinho, Conte, all these good managers come in and not do what was expected. But to be fair, Ange has come in and really revitalised us, I have to say. And when I look at Ten Hag, I thought he did a brilliant job last season. But when he comes out with things like, it very much made me, it was a bit of a red flag for me as an outsider looking at him when he says, I can't play the football I want to with these players. Like he's saying, I can't play the football, sorry, not I want to, I can't play the football I played at Ajax with the players I have. And then I look at your squad and your team, and it's like, he brought in Onana, he brought in Anthony, he brought in Lissandro Martinez, he brought in Casemiro, he brought in Eriksen, he's brought in Højlund. Like, who is he talking about? That's half the team there. Why? And then I see Ange, and I see, we're playing a lot of our games recently with Emerson Royal and Ben Davies as centre-back, and yet we're still able to, play some good football and put some good performances together. So when Ten Hag was saying things like that, is that not a bit of a red flag for you? Or how did you react to him, making those comments?
It was a little bit confusing when he said that, if I'm being brutally honest. I don't want to make excuses for him, but I was thinking, okay, is he just defending himself because he's got injuries? Is there maybe a little bit of him just sort of trying to make the point of perhaps being a little bit more patient? What's he thinking? Why is he thinking that? Because on the like as a United fan, it's not what you want to hear. And like you say, you look at it, you brought him because you play a certain way at Ajax, which is not only successful but it's entertaining. You're bringing in a lot of players, not just players that you want, but a few players from that Ajax team themselves. So you think, okay, why is it so difficult then? What is the issue here? And I'm just hoping that was maybe a little bit of him just almost not making excuses, but just sort of justifying why the football wasn't great or why the results weren't going the way that they should have done. I think this time last season, you could argue that United weren't playing the Ajax way, but we were winning football matches. So people don't care as much. When you're winning, as a United fan, we lifted our first trophy, we finished third. I wasn't looking at the style of play going, this style of play is terrible, it's woeful, we need to change it, because it was relatively successful. It's only when it stops being successful that people start to question it. And I think the difference between Postecoglou and Erik ten Hag, and I've spoken to journalists about this, and I spoke to fans as well, and I remember I was in Australia a couple of years ago speaking to a couple of Australian Reds I know who were raving about Postecoglou. And his charisma gets him a long way as well. Not just that he's a good manager. He's very charismatic. He's likable. He's very good in press conferences. He's arguably the best manager out there in terms of how he handles the media. He tells you the truth. He's very honest. He's just, he's willing to be critical of his players himself when he needs to be, and he's willing to praise them when he needs to be. And he'll always give you a good answer. I think with Erik ten Hag, he isn't quite as charismatic. He isn't that guy in a press conference who comes across really well and who has the press sort of lapping up every word in the way that Postecoglou does. So I think that goes against Ten Hag sometimes. He's a bit more of a almost like a studious type of footballing geek rather than the sort of block down the pub which Postecoglou can sometimes come across as. I know he's obviously a very talented coach who knows his tactics and his he knows his football, but he comes across as someone you'd probably like to go for a beer with or a drink with. Sometimes very tonight he doesn't come across like that, and I think he suffers because of it.
Yeah, I mean, no disrespect, but one of the other reasons why he probably suffers is if you look at Man United's goal for table this season, only Burnley and Sheffield United have scored less goals than Man United. Even Luton have got one more goal than Man United this season, and they haven't exactly been free scoring, I would argue, for a lot of the season. So, what would you put that down to? All those struggles in front of goal, because you signed, £70 million striker in Højlund, Rashford last season. I think we've got in all competitions 30 goals. So Bruno Fernandes is known as a goal contribution machine in most seasons. So why has it gone so wrong in front of goal this season?
I think the warning signs were perhaps there already last season. You mentioned Marcus Rashford getting 30 goals. We became very reliant on him. You would say arguably over reliant on him. Whereas Marcus isn't the type of player. He can get you goals, and he has had seasons in the past where he's got 20 plus goals, but isn't someone who's consistently prolific. He isn't someone who 30 goals in a season is the first time he's ever done that. He's not like a Harry Kane type where he'll get you that every season. So there's always a concern that if he has a season like he's having now, which he has done in the past where he's not scoring, where are the goals coming from? So your other big sort of gamble was Rasmus Højlund. Think, okay, maybe he can pick up the slack. This is a youngster who he's had one good season at Atalanta, new to the Premier League, only 20 years old. It was a big ask for him to come in and start scoring loads of goals because he's not really shown that he's done that in the past. He can score goals and he's a good player, and we've seen him in the Champions League this season in particular bag a few goals. But it was a big risk that wouldn't pay off, and it hasn't in terms of goals in the Premier League paid off at all. Then you look at some of the other players, Jadon Sancho, who I mentioned earlier. He's gone to Dortmund, just more or less been useless this season, fell out with the manager, nothing happening. Antony, no goals and assists. The signs were already there last season. He wasn't going to get you a load of goals. I think he scored 3 in his first 3 games, then he'd score again in the Premier League for 5 months. So it's a combination of all those things I've mentioned, a bit of a over-reliance on Rashford, who's erratic himself, other wingers not really stepping up, and the big gamble on a young, relatively unproven striker. And now we're seeing all these things come together, and it's left us in a position where, as you've just pointed out, we're being mentioned in the same breath as the likes of Luton and Burnley and teams like that. And Manchester United, we shouldn't be anywhere near those teams, no disrespect to them, in terms of goal scoring. We should be scoring a lot more goals than them because we're a bigger club. We've got, more assets and, money to spend at our disposal. We should be doing much better than scoring 22 goals, whatever it is this season. It's just not good enough.
In terms of getting help for the front line, obviously, Man United were heavily linked with Timo Werner on loan till the end of the season, and Tottenham came out of nowhere, kind of from a Tottenham fans' point of view. We definitely came out of nowhere and kind of pinched this signing. I don't know how close you ever was to a Man United loan deal, but we kind of just, kind of came in and swooped in and we've got it over the line. What was your reaction to, first of all, the links to Man United and then the fact that Tottenham just came out of nowhere and swooped in for him?
I'll be honest with you, I wasn't massively keen on the Timo Werner move. I've said that on camera a few times. He was a good player the first time around, I think, at Leipzig. The issue I was looking at his numbers at Chelsea. They're not that bad. I think he became this sort of figure of fun at Chelsea, and this comical figure everyone used to like to hammer. But if you look at it in terms of his goals and assists, he contributed. I think the issue I had with him was some of those misses. When you look at the clips, and we're living in an age, don't we, better than anyone, where things get clips up and you become a meme. Some of his misses were woeful, and it's like, I worry that he's coming to United where the expectation is a lot higher than it probably was even at Chelsea, certainly than it is at Leipzig. All this pressure, probably have to play a lot of games because, like you say, we're over-reliant on the players I've already mentioned, and it doesn't work out for him. I think he's going into a better environment at Spurs. It makes more sense for Spurs. You've got a manager that everyone's enjoying playing under. You're scoring goals. He's probably not going to start. I think if everyone's fit, you'll be able to tell me more than I know. You could argue he wouldn't start at United, but the amount of injuries he probably would end up playing a load of games. Valverde came in as a sort of backup striker last season, ended up playing about 30-odd games. So it makes more sense that he's gone to Spurs. And I think it kind of shows where we're at Manchester United in a minute. Even a player like Werner, who you look at, you go, not that keen, but we're linked with him, and the manager apparently does like him. We can't even get that deal done because Spurs have come in and gone, right, we will have him, and he's gone, right, nice one. And meanwhile, we're sort of left in this position where I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't get anyone in January, to be honest with you, and that is a massive worry.
Yeah, I mean, being at the moment, Man United sit 8th in the table, 9 points off 4th place. Arsenal, I think we're 8 points off us in 5th. I mean, being in this position in January, are you still kind of holding, some sort of outside hope that, you could make a late charge for top 4? Or is that completely gone in your mind? Are you looking at maybe just somehow getting a Europa League spot for next season? Is that the aim at the moment?
I don't think top four's gone, and I think we've got some big players to come back into the team. Lisandro Martinez, I spoke about him when I spoke to you guys last season. Such a big player for Manchester United and Erik ten Hag. Probably, you could argue, he's our most important player. He really is. He's the sort of the one that makes that team tick, certainly in defence. We've missed him. Even at the beginning of the season, he wasn't fully fit. Obviously, Casemiro's come back. Mason Mount, who's barely kicked the ball for us, he's got to come back in. So those players could make a difference. There's a lot of football left to play as well. And I still feel like United can get top 4. I do think, though, this game on Sunday is massive. I think if you to go is 11 points clear of us, and there's obviously a big gap between us and the likes of Arsenal as well, it's a bit of an ask. I think United need a win on Sunday. I really do. I think it's that important.
Well, your last 2 home games, going into the game against Man United, Spurs Man United on Sunday, Man United's last 2 home games have been a 3-0 defeat to Bournemouth and then a 3-2 home win against Aston Villa where they were 2-0 down. So going into Sunday, I mean, what Man United do you expect to turn up?
You tell me. Your guess is as good as mine. I think we've seen, every time we've had a decent performance or a decent result, we've followed it pretty much all season with a bad one. I know we had a little bit of a decent spell in November in the Premier League, but even that was with certain games in the Cups which weren't great. And then you look at the Forest game recently, it wasn't a good performance. So I'm hoping the fact that we haven't got as many games, it's sort of been a bit quieter. The last game was against Wigan, which, in all honesty, almost felt like a bit of a training game. We got an early goal. We had loads of chances. We should have put the game out of sight. We didn't really take our chances, but it didn't. There was a little bit of a relaxed air to it, and I think that kind of helped Manchester United in terms of like it not being the intensity levels and we're up against it because it's a game against a team that was 17th in League One. So I'm hoping that'll be good preparation for this game. Where going to this game, a lot of the players are feeling a lot fitter and fresher, and we can get at Spurs. So it's difficult to predict anything from Manchester United, but I think we'll be up for this one. And I also think that whilst this season hasn't gone our way, and whilst Spurs are obviously a very good team and are playing well, when Manchester United, with the players we've got, when we do turn up, we can give anyone a game. We've not got a bad team. This is a team that finished 3rd last season and won a trophy, and we've got some very good players. It's just we're just far too inconsistent, and when we're bad, we're terrible.
Well, Spurs as well seem to have some sort of mental block when we go to Old Trafford. Doesn't matter how bad or well you're doing, or how bad or how well we're doing. We always seem to go to Old Trafford and just bottle it. Basically, it happens usually every year. Something usually happens. I remember that Ronaldo hat trick a couple of years ago when we were flying at the time and Man United was stumbling, and yet Man United still got the victory. So I wouldn't be surprised if we go there and we do, for some reason, we do have some sort of mental issue at Old Trafford. So I'm not going there flying with confidence that we're going to get a win, especially as well. Apparently Romero is back in full training and Van de Ven is coming back to full fitness, and we got Dragerson through the door, another centre back. But in a weird way, you might be playing them at a good time, because are they going to be 100% fit? Are they going to be at their sharpest? Just returning from injury. I feel like if it was like another week if the game was in another week's time, I'd be more confident, because it's in a bit of a weird area where it's like I'm not 100% sure how fit our defenders are going to be. Are Man United going to be able to take advantage of that? Also, we got no Son, no Basuma, no Sarr, because they've gone to the AFCON. So you might be playing us at a good time going into Sunday, but I think it's definitely good. I think it's going to be an open game. I can't see Man United being really defensively solid. I do see Spurs opening up, but I've got a feeling Man United are going to be able to take advantage of maybe our defenders not being fully fit. But talk to me about the Onana situation. Is he going to play on Sunday?
Yeah, it's a real weird one, this, because I think his Cameroon play the day after against Guinea. I think they've got in the AFCON. But apparently he's going to play against Spurs, then hop on a plane, fly over to the African Cup of Nations, and I don't think he's going to play in that Guinea game. I think he's got a deal sort of struck with his manager think it's Rigobert Song who's the Cameroonian manager, and they're going to just sort of let him have that game off. I think so anyway. That's what we're hearing, that he is available for the Spurs game, which from a United point of view is good. I know he's been a bit inconsistent on Nana, but he is our first choice goalkeeper, so you want your best players to be available, especially for a game of this importance. So yeah, it's probably not ideal for Cameroon. They're probably looking at.
I mean, if you were Cameroonian, like, would you not feel very disrespected with that?
Yeah, massively. I think the sort of the flip side to that might be the fact that he did retire, I think, from international football, and he's come back. So you could argue, well, at one point he wasn't going to play any games in this competition. Now at least you're going to have him for the bulk of it. But I mean, can you imagine if it was England, for example?
Mm-hmm.
It was an England player, and he said, "Oh, I've got a club game, and then I'm going to fly over, but I might have to miss the first game of the Euros." We'd all be up in arms. So I get it. I can understand why Cameroonian fans might be a little bit disappointed. But just if I'm going to be selfish as a United fan, I'm glad he's playing.
Yeah, I mean, it puts extra pressure on him, though, doesn't it? Because, like, if he makes a mistake or something, everyone's going to say, well, maybe he's got the AFCON on his mind, maybe he shouldn't have played this game, all that kind of stuff. So I find it a weird decision. I think if I'm him, if you're going to the AFCON, you just go. You go for the whole tournament. You don't do this halfway house where you're missing one game, but then you fly out. I mean, I think that doesn't help probably his teammates in the AFCON. Surely the sub keeper, whoever is the number 2 keeper for Cameroon, will be like, well, I'm here for the whole tournament. Why are you giving my place up to a guy who decided to miss the first game? And then for the Man United's point of view, you've got your own substitute keepers. Like, he's probably thinking, I don't know who your sub keeper is actually. I can't think off the top of my head. Who's your sub keeper?
Bayande, Alti Bayande. He's a lad. We bought him. He's a Turkish goalkeeper. I think he's got a few caps for the Turkish national side, but he's not had a look in yet. Even against Wigan, we thought he might get a game then, but it's been Andre Onana who's just been sort of the first choice throughout the season. So obviously the manager knows him. He knew him at Ajax, brought him in. Big decision to sort of let David De Gea leave and bring in Andre Onana. So I can understand why the manager, why Erik ten Hag wants him and believes in him. And I think it might be a part of Onana where he's not had it all that easy since he's got to Old Trafford. He's had a few games, especially in the Champions League, which have been really disappointing. So maybe there's a part of him who's like he's desperate to play as many games as he can for United because he still feels he's got to prove himself. So I think that's come into it as well. I think if Andre Onana, if United were flying and Andre Onana had been keeping loads of clean sheets and playing really well, he might be more confident in just saying, look, I'm going to have to miss this game. I think there's a question there as to whether he feels he has to play to try and sort of help prove himself a little bit.
Maybe he understands what a massive game it is as well. But if I'm that Man United sub-keeper, I'm thinking, like, you're going to have to play me anyway when Onana goes to the AFCON. Like, you're that desperate to not play me that this guy's willing to miss the first game of an international tournament just so I don't get a game. And I would be a bit frustrated with that as well. And I want to touch on Christian Eriksen as well, obviously a long-time Tottenham player. Was a massive fan favourite while he was here. So, he's in 18 months now into his Man United career. I still feel like you haven't seen the best of him, or maybe you haven't found his best position. But how would you assess how Eriksen is going at Man United?
He was absolutely flying when he arrived, and I was pleasantly surprised. I think I spoke to you guys last season. I was raving about him because I didn't appreciate him when he was at Spurs and when he was at Brentford. I think he had a very good game against United once, but I was like, he's a good player. I just didn't realise how good he is. And he became a very important player under Erik ten Hag in those first few months, especially. He then got an injury against Reading. It was Andy Carroll, who I'm sure you'll remember from his Liverpool and Newcastle days. He just basically booted him all over the pitch. And he was out for a little while, Eriksen. And since he's come back, he's been a little bit more erratic. He's some good games, some a little bit quiet. He's not the player that you probably want when it's a bit of a battle in midfield. He's not that type of guy. He's more the player that can help dictate the pace of the game and pick out passes and stuff like that. But when he's on fire, United play well, and when he's struggling, United struggle. And you might look at that as a sort of cause and effect. He's that important to us. So I like Eriksen. I think if he's fit, he'll start. The manager likes him. I think there are some question marks as to how fit he is, or he's been ill, sorry. So I don't know if he's going to be back from his illness. But no, I've been really impressed with Christian Eriksen, and I think he's a very good player and a bit of a bonus, to be honest with you. Free transfers. Not very often United get players on the cheap or for free, and yet he's been one of our best players under Erik ten Hag, and hopefully he's back for the Spurs game and he'll have that little bit of a extra added sort of incentive of playing against his old club.
It's a bit of a weird one with him because for Man United, he seems to play in this like centre midfield role, like in either in a pivot or in a midfield three. Where at Tottenham, he was always known as a more of a number 10 attacking midfielder who was a bit of a goal and assist machine. And he doesn't. Maybe he's just adapted his game with his age and he's become a different player. But I mean, I look at Eriksen, I don't see the player I saw at Tottenham. I see a good player, but I'm not seeing a player. I don't see him in a position that's getting the best out of him. Like at Spurs, he was all around that attacking third, just causing havoc, like with his assists and his passing range and his ability for a long shot. And I think he's done well at United, but maybe it is just he's adapted his game, being over 30 now and he can't do that job anymore. But it's a shame I don't see that Eriksen anymore, because I think that was where we saw the best of Christian Eriksen. Is there any sort of clamour to get him in a more attacking position?
I think there is a little bit. I think especially with Kobbie Mainoo coming into the side. Also, Christian Eriksen, he's not a defensive midfielder. He's someone who can drop deep if he needs to. And like you say, he isn't always in the attacking final third. He tends to be a little bit more all over the place, to be honest with you. And I mean that in a positive way. I think there's a bit of confusion going on with United's midfield at the minute. Sometimes you'll see Bruno further forward. Sometimes McTominay's coming in. Other times it'll be Christian Eriksen. We're still waiting to see what's going to happen with Mason Mount. He's been... he was in the side early doors and he was out, obviously, with injury. So it is a very confusing time. But for me, I would like to see Christian Eriksen having having less responsibilities in that midfield defensively. Because there's times when he is sort of deep and he's not a tough tackling type of player, but he is sort of almost alongside, Kobbie Mainoo, or at times we've seen him almost alongside Casemiro, where you want to see him, like you're saying, a bit further up the pitch, because I think picking out those important passes is what Christian Eriksen does, and he does it very well.
And coming from a Man United fan, looking at Spurs going into Sunday, obviously you did get, as I mentioned before, you got a really good result against Aston Villa at home not so long ago, beating them 3-2. Is your feeling, looking at Tottenham, that it's going to be a really big struggle to contain Spurs on Sunday? Or do you feel like if you do what you did to Aston Villa, you're more than capable of getting 3 points on Sunday?
It's weird because I feel like it might come down to who's missing their players that are absent the least, if that makes any sense. If you can unpick that one, like you're obviously missing Son. Bissouma, who had a very, very good game against us at your ground earlier on in the season. I think he's a very good player. He's impressed me this season, Bissouma, what I've seen of him for Spurs, because when he was at Brighton, I thought he was all right, and then obviously it didn't really happen for him in his first season, but when I've seen him this season, it looks very good. So he's going to be a miss for you. You mentioned there about the defenders. Are they going to come back in? You've obviously, had some important players there that have not been available. So it's hard to call. I still feel like if United turn up, we can win this game. And there's still that part of me that feels like we will turn up, because just like I said earlier, having that sort of game against Wigan as the last game, a bit of a break. The last sort of home game against Villa was a much more positive game than the previous one against Bournemouth. I'm just hoping we can sort of kick on a little bit, but it's so difficult to call because Spurs are having a good season. They are, and United aren't. That's the short and long of it. So it's weird. I think if you had Son and Maddison and Bissouma all starting, I think United are going to be in real trouble. But the fact you're missing some key players gives me a hope that United can get a result.
All right, Jay, appreciate your time, mate. Appreciate you previewing the Man United game on Sunday. Well, quick prediction, what's the scoreline you're going for?
I've done a few previews. I usually give a different preview on a different, depending what channel. I think United will win this, and I'll probably end up beating my words, but I'll go 2-0 United.
Brilliant. 2-0. We're not even going to get a goal. Wow. You heard it here first on We Are Tottenham TV. Appreciate your time, Jay. Go check out, if you want to see more of him on the Trevor Paddock, go check him out on YouTube. The link will be in the description of this video. But that is all we have for today's video. Let me know in the comment section below everything we discussed today, and we'll see you next time. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, come on, you Spurs.